I'm Christine Watts, VP of Corporate Marketing here at Taylor & Francis, and I am delighted today to welcome Allyson Stewart Allen, an accomplished author, broadcaster and CEO. Allyson, thank you for joining us. Please, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Allyson Stewart Allen. I'm the CEO of International Marketing Partners, and I really spend my time helping companies expand internationally, doing it profitably, doing it without falling into the common traps and pitfalls that often occur if you don't do your homework very well, and especially if you don't understand the culture of the country that you are expanding in. I also am an educator and create leadership programs for a variety of global business schools and for companies directly, and am a regular commentator and broadcaster for a range of news outlets and print media.
With what feels like almost daily news on tariffs and trades, a new administration, what advice would you give when working with Americans?
I think in the current highly volatile environment we're in the US, in Europe, in most parts of the world, my advice now to companies and corporate leaders that are working with Americans is to be flexible. We're in a VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And because of that, planning is nearly impossible in terms of long range. So companies who are trying to grow in the U.S., who are negotiating with Americans, influencing Americans, communicating with Americans, need to be aware that that volatility is also affecting them, adding levels of stress, the uncertainty often around tariffs, strategies for mitigating the commercial impact of those. So it really means that companies that are aiming to grow their U.S. presence not only need to do their homework, but to appreciate that their counterparts are also feeling just as destabilized as you might be. And so therefore, being open and honest about that, but also trying to find a way through, navigating a way through. There always is a way to find, your way through tariffs. And so I think just having that open, honest conversation, Americans are very open, will probably be the best way to get to a happy outcome.
In thinking about an American, what would you say it feels like for them right now?
I think for Americans right now, the volatility in the U.S. economy because of tariffs, because of foreign exchange rates fluctuating, the dollar has taken a hit, and huge uncertainty. I think for American business leaders, that uncertainty is very problematic. They're trying to allocate money for capital projects. They're trying to allocate money for international expansions themselves. They're trying to navigate the implications of tariffs. So I think American business leaders are finding this moment extremely worrying. Also because they're concerned about brand USA. There's never been a time like this where the world's view of America has probably been as low as it is right now. And so business leaders are trying to shake off that taint and hope that we can build trust one-to-one, and that you should trust me, not just because I'm an American, but you should trust me because I have certain values that have made the U.S. such a successful economy in the past. So I think American business leaders are grappling with quite a lot at the minute.
Yeah. What inspired you and Lainey to write Working with Americans?
So my co-author Lainey Denslow and I ended up writing this book actually in response to the rejection we had when we pitched the opposite book. So originally we wanted to write a book for Americans to help Americans understand the world. And we went to two very well-known U.S. publishers in New York who said, we don't think Americans would read that book. And we thought, that's so strange. Why wouldn't they read this book? So on reflection, we thought, well, actually, the global market, the market outside of the U.S. for a book that helps the rest of the world understand Americans, if Americans aren't going to try to understand the rest of the world, that's a bigger commercial opportunity. So we thought, well, why don't we do a book on how to help, how to work with the Americans? And she and I said, oh, we're sure a book like that will have been written by now already. I mean, of course it would. And we looked, our first edition of the book came out in June 2002. So back in sort of 2001, we looked online, which of course we still had search engines then as well. And we could not find any book on how to navigate the American business culture. And we were stunned, but delighted. So we ended up writing a proposal, went to a few publishers. The first edition was accepted by a publisher who said, this is great. And in the intervening time, the world has changed a lot since 2002. So our second edition with Routledge came out in January 2020. And we're delighted. We had a lot of updates to do because in 18 years, the U.S. Business culture is different. And here we are, very happy that we're helping leaders in big companies all over the world, even helping Americans, believe it or not, who use our book to help their international employees understand head office. So it serves multiple purposes, and I'm really glad it does.
Working with Americans is now in its second edition. Why is it still relevant today?
It's been 5 years since our second edition came out. And I think even now, and maybe especially now, it's important that a Working with Americans book exists because of the uncertainty in the economy, because of the leadership in Washington, D.C., and the navigation skills that are required to not only work your way through what decision-making approaches might a presidential administration be applying, but also to understand how do we build really profitable and meaningful business relationships, partnerships with U.S. counterparts. And a handbook like ours really solves that problem. If you're trying to be successful in what is still currently the world's largest economy, I'm a Californian. California is the fourth largest global economy in GDP terms, would displace, I think it might be Canada in the G8, just one state of 50 in the U.S. So navigating that, I think, is really helpful. And it also challenges the assumptions that people around the world might have about what America is like, how we negotiate, how we communicate, how we influence. So if we can provide some steps, tactical tools and advice, frameworks that help leaders do it well, then they have more success commercially, but also personally. They have happier, less stressful relationships with their counterparts in the U.S.
If there's one standout lesson or advice that you would give about working with Americans, what would that be?
I think if there's one piece of advice I would give business leaders and companies trying to improve or build or create their relationships, business relationships with Americans, I think it's to be human, not try to be American, because you'll never do that authentically. That's not really what you ought to be doing. What you ought to be doing, though, is understanding where are Americans coming from when they negotiate, when they communicate, what's their preferred approach, generally speaking. Okay, you can't, of course, say all 360 or so million Americans are always like this. They're not. Nobody is. I don't want to, our book isn't about stereotyping, but it is about giving generalizations. And therefore, if you know going in that this is probably the approach your American counterpart will adopt, then you can be prepared, you can be ready to succeed, you can be ready to close the sale and match the confidence that the Americans have, that we have about selling and marketing and being, upfront about our achievements, then you will be successful. So in a way, being prepared, knowing going in to a negotiation or a relationship, I think that has to be helpful. So that's really our ambition.
Allyson, what would you say most companies never consider when working with Americans?
I think one thing most companies rarely consider when they're working with Americans is that they're going to be successful. So leaders, companies assume very often that this negotiation or relationship building is going to take a very long time to bear fruit, and that we need to take baby steps and be incremental, and that, of course, they're not going to like us or our offering or what our services or products. But actually, you need to go in with any American conversation on the basis that this is going to work and that the Americans are going to be open and interested in our product or service because it's new and different. And we talk about how it's new or different because that's what Americans want to know. It's a crowded marketplace there, and if you're not articulating those points of difference, then you're going to be lost in a very, very busy place. So I think very often companies go in assuming this will never work, we'll be a bit tentative, we'll have a small ambition. Not at all. You need to go in on that assumption that it's going to work, that the Americans are going to want to continue the conversation, possibly even place an order. So you need to be ready, price in dollars, have thought through how you're going to get, if it's a physical product, how will you get it into the U.S. market logistically? If it's a professional service, who are the people that are going to deliver that? I think you have to go in on a positive footing.
If there's one piece of standout advice that you would give to organisations to be successful and effectively win when they are working with Americans, what would it be?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that business leaders have when they want to grow in the U.S. market is scale. I'm not sure you can teach scale. You can advise that you ought to be ready to, sweep the whole of the U.S., all 50 states, that it's an economy, for example, 10 times the UK economy, that it's, therefore, you need to be ready with infrastructure and be ready to be successful in an economy of that size with that appetite. So often you see companies grow in the U.S. in a very small step-by-step way with let's prove ourselves first in a very small part of the country, and then we'll think about how we grow in other parts of the U.S. In a way, you're in your planning, you have to assume we're going to absolutely succeed in a market of 360-something million people. And therefore, here's our plan. We're starting in city X, we're then going to city Y within 12 months, then we're going to the next city 6 months after that, and have a plan for that growth that is ambitious, that matches the ambition that they will find in the U.S. The small, tentative, risk-averse approach, that's just really not going to work in the U.S. You have to match the noise level, and you have to match the level of ambition and the appetite Americans have for new, improved products. I mean, the national religion of the U.S. is Darwinism. If you're new and improved, we're all yours. We're listening. We're super interested. So being ready to be successful across the country rather than just in one microclimate, that's very hard to teach. You can explain, but it's not in your gut. It's hard to get people to really understand that if you haven't been raised in a large economy like the United States.
Why is customer service so important when you're working with Americans and working within the US marketplace?
So customer service for Americans is really important, and it'll make or break a sale. I mean, what we've been seeing over the years is an erosion of the personal touch. Everything now is call centers that are in far-flung parts of the world. Often the agents in those call centers aren't very well briefed, and they're not empowered to solve your problem. So at the minute, most Americans are extremely frustrated with the quality of customer service that they were used to, that is now automated. You dial a number, you have to press 1 for issue X. If it's issue 2, you choose another button on the phone. It's impersonal, it's automated, and it doesn't resolve the problem. So historically, and the best companies in the U.S. own your problem as a customer, and the people on the front line, whether they're sales reps or whether they're marketing reps or whether they're from the call centers, they are empowered to solve your problem. And that gets huge customer advocacy. And there's a direct correlation between good customer service and advocacy from the customer who goes online, writes a fantastic review, tells 20 people what a great brand you are, and the investment in good customer service pays back in great number, exponentially. So it's confusing for us when we have poor customer service because it's a short-term win for the company. It's a cost-cutting measure usually. But we've come to expect good service, and we expect that the agent or the company will own our problem. And the reason is because it's in their commercial interests as a company to own our problem. So I look often to the U.S. for good examples of customer service because of that ownership.
You're a broadcaster, a speaker, an author. How can people listening to this find out more?
So I'm a regular keynote speaker. I facilitate roundtables. I'm a broadcaster. So a lot of the films of those talks and TV appearances, the print media, all of those are available on my company website. The company is International Marketing Partners, and the website is intmarketingpartners.com. And you can also find 2 free chapters from our book, Working with Americans, on that site as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.